Welcome everybody to the Villa Barraquino Twitch channel. My name is Matt,
My name is Christy.
and today, as we have been doing in previous weeks, we're going to run through some Star Wars The Old Republic heroics, and we're just doing that as a background while we talk about the most recent episode of the Book of Boba Fett, or as we like to call it now, generic Star Wars, because they threw just about every bit of Star Wars they could into that episode of Star Wars. We will be going through spoilers, so we're presuming that you've come to this stream having just watched that episode of Book of Boba Fett, that mind-blowing episode. And we'll get moving very shortly. As you can see, we are standing on the planet, or the moon, Yavin. The planet Yavin is in the background behind us. If Kaderra pans up a little bit, you'll better see the gas giant in the sky above those temples. Star Wars The Old Republic is set well before the original trilogy, of course. So these are not our main characters, as we've said before on this stream. We are waiting for the next major update in Star Wars The Old Republic coming out in a little over a week. A little under a week. No, a little over a week.
On the 14th.
Yeah, and for that reason we're running some of our secondary characters to gain some renown. Yep, to gain some renown points. That is a parameter that will be being pulled in 7.0. I'm just trying to get a couple of achievements associated with that. I'm ready to go when you are, and we'd like to start.
Yep. Okay, so we'll start at where is it? Republic Forward Camp.
Yep. That was not quite the episode of the Book of Boba Fett that I was expecting.
No.
It was an awful lot more than I was expecting. I haven't been going deep into the rumors, but I knew of some of the things that we could theoretically expect to take place, and or that people were wishing for, or that I've heard rumors regarding. This episode was directed by Dave Filoni, so I guess it's not surprising that a lot of Dave Filoni characters made their appearance. But it was a lot more than I thought it was going to be. A heck of a lot more of Luke and Grogu and Jedi training. A really interesting cameo by Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka. The episode started off with Cobb Vanth, which I was really pleased to see. Interesting scene, the opening scene, very interesting. The Pikes expanding the territory, moving through Mos Pelgo, encountering Cobb Vanth, the Marshal of Mos Pelgo, aka Freetown. Sans Mandalorian armor at this point, but still a force to be reckoned with on the whole, it would seem. He made a pretty gutsy move, taking on 4 of the Pikes by himself. You would have thought he'd be outgunned, but he moved pretty quickly when it came down to it. What do you think about the opening scene there?
Yeah, that was cool. Like, I guess I should have been aware at the sort of high chance of returning characters in that. We know that he was on Tatooine, that he had Boba Fett's armor, but I honestly thought the only time that we'd see him would be in respect to Boba Fett's armor. And that wasn't the case. That was completely separate, but obviously he has skills. He's somebody that has sort of worked with Mando before, so it kind of made a lot of sense to pull him in. I mean, at this point, I don't even know what to expect. This episode was full of things that was just sort of making me gasp, and just so exciting. Yeah, it was cool that they kind of showed that he is very much the sheriff, the lawman, standing up to the Pikes, and obviously he doesn't have Beskar armor anymore to sort of back him up a little bit, but that doesn't stop him.
Lead on, I'll keep following.
Yeah, and he just like really quickly takes a couple of the pikes out, leaving one.
Well, he took 3 out in a pretty quick short, which, like I say, a pretty gutsy move.
Yeah,
You would have
very
thought,
much a
but then
sharpshooter, takes them out very fast with his sort of, side blaster. And basically gives the last one standing a sort of an ultimatum that he can leave, but he'll take this chest as sort of payment, and the pike sort of says that that chest is worth more than his whole town, but leaves it for him anyway. We do see the Camtono use, the sort of the white, the ice cream maker that has been used in Star Wars before. We'll go up this way. With, I assume, to be some amount of money credits in it. Just a fun sort of nod, because we of course saw that in the sort of the first season of The Mandalorian, that housed the Beskar sort of Imperial bars.
He presumably didn't know that chest actually contained spice proper.
Yeah.
He may have had his suspicions because he knows that there's spice running.
Yes.
Either way, he knew that a message had to be sent, and hitting them in the pocket was a good way to do that.
So yeah,
Turns
and
out
then
it was spice, which he's not impressed by.
yeah, he just sort of kicks it over, and it all spills out onto the sand. Because he obviously doesn't want to sell it, just wants to dispose of it. So that was
interesting. They call him Mos Pelgo Freetown now. Freetown is what it was called in the Chuck Bendig Aftermath novels, where it's referenced later down the line.
Yeah, I think that's...
So we moved on from that encounter. That was the cold open before the opening credits, wasn't it?
Yes. After tipping it out on the sand, there's the title, and it's From the Desert Comes a Stranger, I think.
Yep.
Which is, now having seen the whole episode, is a reference to something that happens right near towards the end.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it. I guess it would have been a bit simplistic for a Cad Bane to have been the stranger at that point.
Yes, because we've seen him. The stranger is referencing a new addition to the live action, not a new character. But I guess we'll get to that in a little bit. And then after the title sequence, we come to a green planet.
Yeah.
With Mando in
so
his...
we're approaching that. And then the blue N1, the modified N1.
So we know that that's
we knew that he was
Mando.
We knew that
still
he had
in combat.
inkling, a mission to find Grogu. So I don't know how he found it. The Jedi training planet. I don't know if he had that information, was allowed to have that information, because it was supposed to be pretty secret. I don't believe that planet is actually named in canon yet. And it's referred to as a secret location in most instances. So one way or another, he did find it. And we kind of knew what might happen. We knew that he was going there, that rushing through your mind is the possibilities that we could see Grogu training at some level, maybe. May even see Luke. Don't know really how deep they'll go down that path. After a little bit of teasing, not clear what they would give us, the waiting, Mando waiting on our behalf on the bamboo bench.
Well, of course we see R2 first off.
Well, yes.
That was kind of a bit of a tell, because obviously the last time we saw live action R2, he was right next to Luke. Yeah. So I felt like
James
that was...
We got James in chat saying, glad they didn't paint the N1. We talked about that, just a shade in the podcast that we put out earlier today. It was really interesting that they didn't repaint it. Well, in fact, they did the opposite. He actively took paint off, which didn't actually seem that necessary, and the consequence of that is you've got a stark silver paint or finish, and a hint of a couple of yellowy orange stripes, which very much looks like the paint job he opted for on his Razor Crest, and of course his armor across the board is silver toned.
Yeah,
so,
it works really well with his sort of his style, his aesthetic.
And they took a few cues from the basic Y-wing concept that you don't need full armor plating across the entire structure of a starship for it to function. So we had a little bit of exposed componentry in the N1, in the same way that we have seen with Y-wings.
Especially since he's added a lot. Obviously, they are a fairly sleek, fast machine. He's added a whole lot of sort of extra bits to it. So yeah, they're sort of protruding outside of the standard shape. So it kind of heightens the modification look to it.
So James in chat just saying, part of him wanted it to be yellow again, and yeah, I mean, classic yellow would have been quite cool, but would have been cool to see that strength of reference, that really solid reference. But silver has its benefits.
Yeah.
I mean, it really lent to. I mean, I know we talked about last week's episode now, but it really lent to a cool reveal scene as it was as it was brought out from the hangar into the Tatooine sunlight last week.
Yeah.
And the sunlight kind of hit it. That was a really cool reveal. So we see, so we've gone through the N1 approaching the green planet, and R2 showing up. A bunch of large ant-like droids building
Moving
a
sort
temple,
of stones, yeah.
Yeah, which were strongly reminiscent of what we see later in the sequel trilogy as the new Jedi Academy, the new Jedi Temple Luke is building. We don't see enough detail at that point to be confident that's exactly what it is, but I think everyone that was watching was pretty sure that's where they were heading with the story. So interesting to see that connection at that early stage of development. Yep, James in chat, hopefully we get to see the N1 in combat, and it's interesting to see if it still has the proton torpedoes. Yeah, it's clearly, I assume that, they've souped up the armaments as well as the engines.
Yeah.
So.
The sort of the blaster bits on the front look much more heightened. The classic Naboo ones sort of more had sort of ports internally. Yeah. These ones have got full sort of extra armaments. That's got to come into play somehow. If it's not in Boba Fett, then if he still has it, in The Mandalorian Season 3.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to happen in this remaining week of Book of Boba Fett. We haven't seen a lot of the Rancor yet, but we're expecting to see that N1 in use next week to some extent. So, I guess it was pretty cool to see Cad Bane, but the Jedi Temple encounter was kind of mind-blowing. They seem to have dialed up the CG on Luke's face. We first encounter Ahsoka, don't we?
Yeah. The ant droids kind of build Mando a bench, and R2 kind of powers down, so he gets the sense that he's got a bit of a weight. So he sort of chills out on the bench when he wakes up. Ahsoka is kind of leaning there, sort of just hovering nearby, and of course the two of them know each other. They have met in Mandalorian Season 2. And I was not expecting to see her. That was a complete surprise. I wasn't ever sure that they would directly show Ahsoka and Luke crossing paths.
She implies that she's not there permanently, and we see that later. She actually departs, but she says she is there because she's visiting she is a friend of the family, so she's referring to the father of Luke Skywalker.
Yes.
Of course. One thing I noticed quite early on, particularly when she was walking around, that Rosario really seems to be making efforts to mimic the movement style of the animated version of Ahsoka. It really felt like she was going out of her way. I don't think some of that connection was accidental.
Yeah.
The way she folded her arms, the way she held her head, even the way she walked when they were just strolling through the bamboo forest.
This was a Dave Filoni directed episode?
That's right, yeah.
And I feel like that really helped, because obviously he would have really been instrumental in forging her mannerisms. He would be able to say, she often did this and that, and help guide the performance to be as sort of authentic. And I really enjoyed seeing her in a more well-lit area. In the previous episodes where we saw her, that was kind of dark planets, often at night. It was really fun sort of seeing her details, her costume, and just sort of having a slightly lighter tone to her performance. in this one. I really quite appreciated that. And then
So we got Fred in chat just mentioning, because of course we know that Lucasfilm hired Simug, the deep fake expert, to contribute to what we now know to be specifically Luke, not just deep fake in general.
yes.
And that did seem to result in
The movement in this was
level.
so complex when we think about the performance of
Well, it was
in the Mandalorian.
The performance was component of many parts. There was a stunt performer, there was a body stand-in, and then there was the facial deep faking and CG, and it all came together really, really well. He was doing some sort of lightsaber exercises.
He was jumping around. It was like
with the Grogu backpack.
It really felt like any kind of limitations they might have tried to constrain the performance, because when Luke is in The Mandalorian season 2, he stands fairly still. He doesn't move around a lot. He doesn't.
Same as back in Rogue One. They didn't really put
because
Tarkin and Leia through the paces.
Yeah. They kept them fairly still so they could do a lot of complex mapping, but man, Luke was just moving. And there were moments where he was just sort of like talking to Grogu and being quiet, and he would just look to the side and look around. It was almost like showing off the sides of his face, showing that, and oh man, it was uncanny. It looked so convincing.
Also, Mark Hamill is credited in the credits, and I wonder if that means he was on set again.
Yeah, doing some performance elements so that they can incorporate that into the.
Even just consulting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know it's not perfect. I know it's not identical to as if Mark Hamill had necessarily done that. It's not.
But I feel like the fans.
I'm happy with it. Yeah.
Yeah, the fans, like, I know a lot of people had the sentiment that they had rather had a sort of Harrison Ford's likeness for the Solo movie, rather than sort of accepting somebody else cast in that role. And I feel like they decided, okay, you know, that one worked well enough because we don't have a live action young Han Solo, but we do have a live action young Luke, so we sort of have to stick with that. It would be too jarring because we know what he looks like around this time period. So I was really, really excited that we just got this much Luke. I mean, it was pretty mind-blowing and emotional to kind of when he turned up. And then this was just like, oh, so much more, you know. This wasn't just like right at the end. He was right there, the full thing. Again, this felt like last week was all about the Mando. This one felt like a huge chunk of it was Luke and Grogu.
Just kept going. He pulled out the training remote.
And at this point, I mean,
he was running around doing the flips just like an ESB. We saw him running through the forest and set in my mind if he flips, if he does a Dagobah flip, then I'll just flip my mind. I could have just kept watching it, even though not a lot was happening. Just stuff on the screen, not necessarily even story. I could just keep watching that.
Yeah.
So run us through what other details we had during the Luke encounters.
So it kind of starts out a little quiet. Grogu is using the Force to pick up the frog, and then sort of Luke sort of shows off a little bit, sort of flexes his ability and Force lifts all of the frogs in the nearby little pond, just sort of showing that he's a lot more confident. Sort of showing Grogu what he could be doing if he sort of practices, and then he sort of says, let's go for a walk, and he starts talking about Yoda at that point, which is again like oof, and then he talked about, you know, I knew him, and he was like, a size matters not. He spoke like that, and then he talks about, do you remember back home?
The flashback.
Yes.
Yeah, just before we get onto that, Fred in chat just talking about Cobb Vanth in the later scene. He's just saying, Fred says he's sure he only got a shoulder hit, and the deputy's toast. I kind of thought it was kind of clear they were telegraphing that the deputy was going to make a dumb move. We'd established that earlier on, that he was a little bit twitchy, and I thought he was going to be the only one that got hit, but yeah, I think I saw some of the other locals actually applying something to.
Yeah, it looks
Boba
like they're
Fett's
trying to
shoulder,
render aid
which
rather than just going, oh no,
he's
he
not.
did.
He's not. Yeah. So yeah, I'm not counting him out just yet either.
Yeah. But the
And
the flashback
yeah,
that
yeah,
we
yeah.
see
Like
sort of
10%.
Grogu doing sort of as a force one, which is an interesting sort of
Oh,
force ability. This is a
and
new technique that we haven't really seen
yeah. The mind
executed.
meld.
Yeah,
It's a
he sort
Vulcan
of
trick.
helps Grogu. Oh, we need one more droid before we do this.
Yeah.
Right.
So as that, my mind was just racing 100 miles an hour during most of this episode. You could see it was just going, will they, won't they? You could see that they were going to go for the whole mind meld memory trick, and were they going to show a planet of Yoda's? Where was that going to go?
Yeah.
So didn't see a planet of Yoda's. They didn't go quite that deep, but we saw episode 3 era story arc that tells us that Grogu was at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. Which leaves us with more questions.
Yeah, yeah. So it's kind of done in that little slightly sort of distorted flashback. So he looks like he's possibly
that's the same
being
technique. That's the same overlay as Padme's dreams.
yes,
Padme's
yeah.
nightmares.
Yeah, so we see that he witnessed the 501st troopers, the blue and white Anakin's troopers that stormed the Jedi Temple, and we
Which
see
is
them.
interesting because Luke was saying he needed help to remember. It's like he blanked it out because it was traumatic.
Yeah, yeah. Or possibly just because he was young, but yes, he clearly does remember that. But yes, he probably blanked it out because that would have been because Luke says when he sort of awakens that I'll help you to sort of defend yourself. That it's like that the galaxy is a scary place.
Mildly interesting that everyone, Din Djarin and now Luke, is referring to the Jedi as his people, and the Jedi Temple as his home. Every time I talk about his people and his home, it's not actually talking about his own straight up species or
which I guess
is of that species.
Which is like obviously if the Mandalorians have foundlings and things like that, that they see the world as more defined by what you believe in rather than your species or the planet you were born on.
So James in chat just wondering if there's actually going to be a genetic relationship between Yoda and Grogu at any point. I mean, if we don't know what the populations are, if there are literally very, very few, then that's not completely implausible.
Yes,
it does fit with the notion that they are very sparse, very sparsely in species.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see.
Because if they were far more common, we probably, we would have seen more than just Yoda, Grogu, and Yaddle.
It's almost more plausible because they are such a sparse species. Almost more plausible than some of the other. This person being related to this person that we see in the Star Wars galaxy.
Yeah, yeah.
So we've got the droids going back to trigger the scanning. Is that what we're up to?
Yep. We'll go over the top. Yeah, so
So reference to Yoda when Luke's talking to Grogu.
And then they're talking. Then we get back to Ahsoka, and she's kind of filling in a little bit of detail here. She says that she's an old friend of the family, and that Grogu will be the first student at the school that is being built. So that
if he sticks around.
R.I.P. Max Rebo. I'm hoping it didn't take out the whole thing, but
there's too many important characters in there. They completely decimate.
Maybe. Well, I don't know if we saw him specifically in this episode. I was taking notes. We saw a Bith and a droid.
They focused on the fact that he wasn't there.
So maybe it was his day off. And he once again misses the big explosions.
I know that. I did notice that.
But Ahsoka's talking. She says that she's an old friend of the family, and she said something about it was Grogu's choice to train with Luke, not her. When Mando was like, "Oh, but you're here, but you said that you couldn't train him," and stuff like that. and that she says something about that she couldn't, impart her will on others. She relays that Grogu misses Mando, and that seeing him will only make his sort of attachment and things more difficult. So
I was wondering how deep they're going to go with that. I thought, will they just...
Will he defy their sort of wishes?
Yeah, well,
because he knows from the armorer that Jedis can't have attachments. The armorer sort of relayed that, saying like that's completely different to what the Mandalorians believe. So I'm just going to take out this one here. So he makes the hard decision and gives the little wrapped up Beskar piece to Ahsoka to give to Grogu, and he departs.
James, just jumping around, but James in chat just saying, I'm not sure if it's in Star Wars lore, but how did Max survive the cell barge explosion? I think it's just generally talked about that there was a lag between the start of the skirmish and the firing of the main cannons into the deck. There's enough of a delay that people evacuated, because there's a few people that are sort of referred to as surviving the cell barge. I don't think it's mentioned any more explicitly or concretely than that.
Yeah.
Just that there's a time delay between the start of the crap going down and the ultimate explosion.
Yeah. So Mando doesn't see Grogu here. I was kind of like a will they, won't they type thing. But as he leaves in the N1, Grogu sees that starship in the distance. We don't know if he is well enough in the Force to know that was
Sense
Mando.
him?
Yeah,
I think
sense him.
possibly. I think they were kind of... Didn't he reach his arm out at that point?
I can't remember.
Yeah. Yep. Fred's saying Yoda's lightsaber was melted by Palpatine in the Legends comics, so
yes.
retcon that.
Yeah, that was really interesting to see them just pull that out, because I was kind of looking at it going, well, did he make one? Like, and I'm like, well, he was there when Yoda passed away, so I guess any important Jedi relics he would have taken with him to basically use to instruct future generations. If you find another Jedi or Force sensitive, they're going to need a lightsaber to practice with. So that's clearly what he's got there.
And or just overall sentimental value.
Yes.
Someone else to find and
it's kind of small. It wouldn't take up much space in his X-wing. So yeah, that's kind of fun. So after...
Guys,
what's that?
Let's get these flappy guys over here.
Yep. That person, they jumped out of stealth. They're trying to catch us. So then we get the epic training montage.
Is this in
the backpack?
In the backpack?
Yeah. He sort of tells them to jump, and we get the because he's in the backpack, and I think this is where we get the Jedi training remote out. And he was sort of trying to teach him to jump, and using the basically the Jedi training remote to sort of shoot at him to teach him to sort of jump out of the way, to dodge. Obviously, it's going to start with
a blunt instrument in terms of training.
I guess he's just using what he's got. We know to a certain extent we saw the younglings in at the Jedi Temple, but they obviously had lightsabers, but they were using sort of things that would be shooting somewhat, not full blaster bolts, but dumbed down. And then we get to the whole getting him in the backpack, and we see sort of a training course of sorts, jumping across water, doing flips in the sort of bamboo forests, and
playing Frogger on creatures in the mud.
Yeah. So that was really quite cool. Obviously harking back very strongly to when he's doing that on Dagobah with Yoda in the background. So the dynamics flipped. Now he is the master teaching a Padawan, a youngling of sorts. And we get very classic Star Wars music in these moments. And then we see him teaching Grogu to sort of balance on the log by the water, trying to tell him to use the Force to balance. And then we see...
Sorry.
Yep.
Go ahead. You finish your sentence, and then I'll jump to chat.
No, I'll see the chat. I did like how Luke asked Ahsoka for advice. Small thing, but to me it was a nice touch, showing Luke still considers himself a student as much of a master. Yes.
We forget she was young, but she is almost a generation older than him.
Yes.
She knew his father. She was younger than Anakin, but that does make it give her seniority.
Yeah, because if Luke was, I'd have to sit down and do the math, but yeah, if she was a Padawan in the Clone Wars, she's somewhere around the age of 14, and we know that Luke was born at the start of the Clone Wars, so she's 10, somewhere between 10 to 15 years older than him, I guess. And he's not old by this stage. If he's 20-ish in New Hope, then he's not too much older, so he's still young. So I think Rosario's a good age to play Ahsoka, and yeah, obviously his training wasn't traditional. She didn't exactly graduate from the Jedi Academy, but she would be more knowledgeable about the old training ways. Yeah, I mean, not that Anakin was very traditional in his training style, but he would have been able to impart.
He wasn't the only one that influenced her.
Yes, she would have worked. Like she knew Plo Koon and many other Jedi at the temple. She knew Yoda, Mace Windu, lots of the other sort of classic characters that we think of.
She would have had the General Jedi textbooks.
Filoni is a god. Yeah. Just the direction of these new episodes and things like
Filoni,
that.
It was cool to see all the Filoni verse pulled in here, but yeah, all credit to Favreau though, because he's penned everything this season.
Yeah, he's picking it up pretty quickly, eh? Obviously, Filoni worked with Lucas, with the story building and setting up everything for the original Clone Wars. Was still sort of over. It was overseen by Lucas. Yeah.
James and Chad putting Ahsoka at about 45, 46.
Yeah.
Something like that.
So yeah, and then we get the Jedi training remote to test reflexes, and this is where we see Grogu really starting to learn how to jump and use the Force. He's flipping around a lot. By this point,
takes a slightly different approach to problem solving.
Yes.
Just dodge, just take it out of the source.
Yep. So he said, sends it into the water. And Ahsoka comes to see. So and then it's sort of her and Luke talking together. Luke knows Mando came to visit, and Ahsoka hands Luke the little gift. And she, I can't remember what she said, but she says something like, so much like your father. She said that phrase, and I was like scribbling that down because, obviously, man, I just wanted to see so much like Ahsoka talking to him about Vader or something like that. Yep, I'm getting this one as well. I would have loved to have seen them specifically say Anakin by name, but I know they're sort of like, dodging around it, knowing the fans will get the references. But yeah, that was really cool. And then we finally, he says, will I see you again? And she said, perhaps, coyly.
Yeah, in another series,
Yeah. So yeah, who knows where that will happen? I mean, goodness knows. If we have an Ahsoka series, she clearly knows Luke at this point. She hasn't just turned up. So we could see Luke very well being in the Ahsoka series. Whatever she happens to do.
They've got all the resources they need to keep doing Luke.
Yes.
So there's no technical reason not to at this point.
Yeah. And so Ahsoka leaves, and that's kind of the end of that segment. But yeah, it's another one of those scenes where we're really going to have to sit down and pay really close attention to the dialogue. And all sorts of little notes. I'm always scribbling away, so I'm sometimes looking down. And then we're going back to Mando in his N1. We see that he has arrived back on Tatooine, and he flies and parks in the docking port part of Jabba's palace. No, the Fett's palace. Yeah, and that was fun. And then it jumps to Gamorrean Guard leads him in because he says he's there by invitation of Fennec Shand, and then we see a big strategy meeting.
Yeah, so people at the table. Well, these are the people that are directly involved with Boba Fett, not the other crime bosses that refuse to help.
Yeah, so we see Black Chrysanthemum, we see the mods, And Boba's there, kind of overseeing the big sort of hollow map.
We've got the Gamorrean guards,
yeah.
and we got the Mayor's Major Domo in handcuffs.
Yeah, that was fun to see him back. I wasn't sure if we could see him again, but that was kind of fun. They talk about they need foot soldiers, and Mando comes in at this point. I can't remember who introduces him. I can't remember if it was Fennec basically introducing him to the group.
Yeah, and Boba just gives him a nod because they've already
crossed paths.
Acquainted.
Yes. Yeah. So Mando's like, I can help with foot soldiers, and then we sort of see him flying off over Tatooine. We see a really cool sandcrawler with a big skull mounted to the top of it.
I almost thought that he was going to recruit
Jawas.
Jawas, so we're going to have a Jawa army.
Well, yeah, they know how to amass weaponry, you know, antique.
Sandcrawlers are pretty heavily armoured.
Yeah. Yeah, they're very much modelled on tanks, aren't they? Because they would have to survive against Tusken Raiders and other sort of things.
Not Jawa army, not yet.
Yeah. I wasn't expecting the last 10 minutes of that episode to be like that. That was a big reveal, wasn't it? I like that we came back to Cobb Vanth, and we see that they have now decorated that bar that we saw in The Mandalorian with what looks like the rib cage or bones of the Krayt Dragon. I thought that was a fun touch.
Cobb Vanth and Din Djarin catching up, obviously buying a drink. I almost hoped that Pedro would take the helmet off.
Yeah.
He's not quite ready for that yet.
Yeah, I think he's possibly still weighing on his mind the conversations that he had in the previous episode. I appreciate seeing the Gamorrean guards again, but I can't help feel having one of them as a hangar guard is a terrible idea. Anyone hopping out of a ship with a blaster would overpower them.
I assumed that he had clearance to land because they just closed the door.
Yes.
Leave it over at entry point.
Yeah, because we did see when Boba was taking his back that there were a lot of guards milling outside. We didn't necessarily see that here, but we do know that Boba Fett is light on muscle. But yeah, I assume that they would have some sort of possible sensors that would let them know that ships are in the area, because it's not in a densely populated area. It's a little bit out of town, so I would assume they'd know if someone's coming.
We'll give them that.
Yeah.
It's the same argument. We need more Massassi.
Yep. And we see Cobb Vanth says that Mos Pelgo is now Freetown, and doesn't seem to be too distraught or upset about the idea of the Pikes in space, because we saw him take them out. He sort of dealt with it. But I think talking with Mando, he does realize that there is a situation in which case the Pikes could really, really overwhelm Tatooine on the whole. So once Mando goes off, he tells, is it the bartender or his deputy, I can't remember, to basically round up all the men and women of fighting age in the town for a town meeting. He's basically going to summon them all to arms.
Yeah, since he was interested to stand up there. But we don't actually get that far, do we?
No. Then we see the figure on the horizon. And this is where the title of the episode really comes in. Oh, bartender, I believe. Thanks for that. The bartender is the sort of person that would know everyone in town. To sort of invite them all for a meeting.
He almost seems more reliable. He's not keen on fighting, but as a
well, yes, bartenders often to be sort of like advice givers, confidants. So well,
he's known him for a long time. He knew him in the previous series, whereas the deputy is a new guy, aka cannon fodder in this instance.
Yes, expendable. And so he sort of gives the warning for everyone to get inside, because he's a little bit suspicious of this figure on the horizon. And as this figure gets closer, the instantly recognizable sort of wide-brimmed hat is evident in this silhouette, and I was like, is it going to be? And then, of course, it is Cad Bane. Now, as far as I'm aware, this is the first live-action depiction of Cad Bane. I don't think he appears in Galaxy's Edge or anything like that. I know we've got Hondo and Naka in sort of a live-action form in the Disney parks and the animatronics there, but I don't think Cad Bane's ever been rendered as a live-action, as apart from sort of translated into realistic type action figures. So this was really, really fun. I was really, really hoping it would be the original animated voice actor, which indeed it was.
Corey Burton.
Yeah. So that was really cool because it's such a distinctive voice. And
yeah, so I think the overall review here was really neat. He did a lot of his initial talking with his head down.
Yeah, so you didn't see his eyes. Yeah,
so
I thought that was really...
focused on the mouth, which had the least prosthetics, had prosthetic dentures, prosthetic teeth, but didn't have a lot else going on. So it really worked as far as a live action rendition because the weird blue cowboy.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah, that whole scene was such a western.
Yes.
You know, the whole people looking through the shutters in the background.
Yeah. Sort of all the twitchy hands by your blaster at your side type thing. And we find out that Cad Bane is working for the Pikes and is basically giving them the ultimatum that you know, leave the Pikes alone, let us run Spice, and we're not going to cause you trouble. So clearly they have brought in Cad Bane, legendary sort of enforcer. We know that he's pretty ruthless, kind of evil. So that kind of really ups the stakes, you know.
Not a fan of Boba Fett as well.
Yes. And, yeah, so he's probably doing it for money, but doing it for the pleasure a little bit as well.
So he actually gives Din a opportunity to
Cobb an opportunity to not help Boba Fett and Din. We can turn back now.
What's that?
We can turn back now.
Trouble?
Yep.
Yeah, but obviously Cobb Vanth just takes this threat. He asks if it's a friendly advice or a threat. He takes this threat to really hammer home the fact that the Pike Syndicate's going to be a problem.
Yeah. James says, definitely adds to it that their blasters all seem to be modelled off of revolvers. Yeah, they do have a bit more, slightly more sort of real world sort of blaster guns.
Yeah, even the blaster effects feel, I know they're energy weapons, but they feel a little bit more like their projectile weapons for some reason when the shots go out.
Yeah. Yeah, and clearly Cobb Vanth doesn't like the threat, which leaves, and he makes an interesting. Sorry, my dude's talking. Cad Bane makes the comment, Boba Fett is a cold-blooded killer who worked with the Empire.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting because obviously we haven't, you know, we know that he's done some ruthless things in the past because he was always, you know, like with the Empire and Darkseid. Yeah. Which I think was fun, and he also tells Cobb Vanth, you should have never given up your armor, which is also kind of a threat. Obviously he knows what Beskar would do, and then Twitchy Deputy kind of ruins it. He kind of goes for his blaster.
You're right, we might as well do this one as well.
Yep, and yeah, I'm just going to drop group for this one.
Yeah.
And then we get the shootout, classic Western shootout. He knows that Cobb Vanth is going to be the more. Pretty sure he hits Cobb Vanth first, and then draws his attention to the deputy, which he just shoots multiple times, so the audience knows that guy's not getting up. But we're still holding out hope for Cobb Vanth. Looks like a shoulder hit. After he walks away, it looks like the townspeople rush over and possibly apply first aid. So fingers crossed. I really want to see him teaming up with Mando and Boba Fett in the next episode.
Even more so.
Genuinely hope his character name is Twitchy Deputy.
Deputy Twitchy,
yeah.
I really love Timothy Oliphant as a Tatooine resident in this capacity.
Yes.
So I hope it's not the last we'll see of him.
Yeah, yeah. And then we get one final. Oh, there's two sort of scenes that come after this. I thought that might be a dramatic place to end the episodes. Honestly, sometimes these episodes feel like they're whizzing by, and sometimes it feels like there's been a ton of it, and you never know quite when it's going to finish. But there's a couple of two major ones. We go back to the sanctuary, the sort of the cantina, the club, that owned by Yavin IV, the Twi'lek. And this one is kind of a little bit from her perspective. And we see the two Twi'lek servers keep sort of going up to some pikes that are sitting there, asking that they want drinks, do they want anything, and they kind of just refuse. And then they mysteriously get up and leave. And then we see the droid server notice that they left their Camtono behind, and you can see it in Gas's eyes. She knows exactly what's about to happen, and then we see a massive explosion. So we assume that most, if not all, of the people inside the club are killed, which was kind of devastating, a bit shocking, but obviously hiring Cad Bane, the Pikes are really seeking to completely kind of crush the spirit and any possible resistance amongst the people of Tatooine. They're making, because we don't know. I don't know if we saw many of the other sort of gang members. Like if we saw Trandoshans in here. I've got to go back and look at that because there's always a lot of people in those scenes in the club. So I don't know if we saw Trandoshans or anything like that, because they promised to stay out of it, but who knows, if they get a little bit caught in the crossfire, that's going to change things a bit, isn't it? And then
so just looking at chat, James thinks the explosion, I think what they were certainly trying to make us think that the room was cleared.
Yeah. So by showing the explosion sort of reaching outside the building as well. And then we get the final bits is with Luke and Grogu again.
Yep. The choice, the decision.
Yeah, we see that the Jedi building now looks finished. We see that there are little bookshelves behind him, which I think is fun.
I don't know if that's a time lapse or fast working droids. It's not really clear.
Yeah. And he's sat Grogu down and basically gives them the choice. He lays out. Now we see the Beskar. It is a little chainmail vest, which I think was cute. I was kind of rooting for
something with the signet on.
Yeah, I thought that might be cute, but I guess it made sense because at this point we don't know if Grogu is going to, be a Mandalorian.
Choose the path of the Mandalorian,
That is what Luke tells him, that he can be a Mandalorian or a Jedi, but he can't be both. And that's when he pulls out Yoda's lightsaber, ignites it, shows that it's still working and everything, and you can kind of see Grogu go, ooh, that's kind of fun, the idea of getting a lightsaber and stuff. But he may only choose one, go back to the Mandalorian or sort of follow the path of the Jedi. And we see sort of Grogu looking at both items and then looks sort of, not up at the camera exactly, but he sort of looks up at what would be Luke, and that's where the episode ends. And then the rest of us are just left there reeling.
They're not straight up cliffhangers per se in some ways, but they always manage to end it just at the point where you want more.
Yeah.
It's a cliffhanger, but not one they're going to revisit straight away.
So James says, I don't really know, but my guess is he'll choose the saber, but he'll turn up to help Din with the saber and chain link on. Yeah, I just...
It's kind of odd to force a choice, considering that we know there's a historic Jedi, Mandalorians who have been Jedi, so it's not completely off the cards that there's not a middle ground.
But we know that, I guess Luke is a little bit twitchy on the idea of people being sort of aggressive,
not being fully trained.
Yes,
not being completely trained in the Jedi way. That's risky.
Because he certainly has, apprehensions about Ben Solo later on. So, yeah. We know that Mando's ship has the capacity to take a small passenger. So, I honestly thought prior to these last 2 episodes that the Grogu arc had ended. That Lucasfilm's like, okay, we've done as much as we can with what is a child, and that it's time to get back to Mando running around wreaking havoc, like we sort of see him with the Darksaber at the start of this episode. And now that's just like reopened all the possibilities. You know, Grogu could come back and be a permanent sidekick sort of addition. You know, is he gonna use his Force powers? Because we know Luke doesn't seem to be completely at odds with Ahsoka. She's not a Jedi, but she's clearly well trained and stuff like that. So he seems to be completely, you know, aware that people can be very well trained in the Force, but not follow a strict Jedi path or Jedi teaching. But yeah, he knows that you kind of have to choose one or the other, as Ahsoka did, you know.
He's looking at the chat again, yeah, huge decision, only 20 seconds to think about it. And he's not even particularly mature at this point, or...
Yeah, he's a kid.
And, yeah.
I just can't believe how much they've got to tell in the final episode. I honestly thought we'd be having a lot more build-up by now. The story is going, like, not all over the place in, like, a bad, meandering way, but this is really pulling together stuff, and I know we were talking about it just after the sort of credits rolled, that this is just Star Wars. It almost doesn't matter what the series title is, that they've well and truly set up the precedent for completely interwoven stories and characters, that they're not keeping it, you know, like when TV shows have spin-offs and they have like that 1, maybe 2 episodes where the characters like jump across and they appear in a different episode. This is well beyond that. This is completely interlinking everything. I mean, part of me is like, are they just gonna like blow our minds with an announced like Luke Jedi training series, after the credits on the final episode of this one, you know? Why are they gonna drop something on us?
Next week's episode will blow our minds, but there's potential for a post-credits scene that...
Yeah, because they'll be sitting there, you know, testing the Luke, going, yep, we can do that. He can jump around with a lightsaber. He can do this. He can read dialogue, talk to characters, interact with a lot of stuff. They've basically showed us a test reel of what their technology can do with recreating Luke in a very convincing way. Goodness knows. I love the locale that they chose. It looked real. I don't know how much of it is on the volume. Did they go and build a temple somewhere with rocks? I like the bamboo surrounding. It was kind of a different feel to what we've seen before in a Star Wars locale. It certainly had a little bit of an Asian influence, I think. Certainly sort of harking back to the idea that sort of certain Asian fighting cultures inspired the Jedi. But, oh my gosh, so we've had so many overlapping things. I did not expect Ahsoka to overlap with both. You know, obviously they introduced her in The Mandalorian, and I was like, okay, cool, she'll get her offshoot, but nope, she's in here, which means that Luke could be fully overlapping in the Ahsoka series, you know, helping out with whatever quest she is on. Yeah, it's just, oof, I'm really hoping they announce something new, like the way that they did Book of Boba Fett. Yeah, they didn't announce it, and it sort of feels like, I don't know, like I know we've got a lot coming this year, but when they announced Book of Boba Fett, it was a full year before we actually got it. They could easily announce something new. You know, or Luke could, you know, just like, I don't know. It was crazy. I'm still sort of reeling from it.
Something that's unfortunately they've set up a precedent with the Book of Boba Fett reveal. That it would almost be disappointing if they didn't. Yeah,
everyone's going to be sitting there at the end of the credits going, come on.
The only vaguely satisfactory alternative would be as if they rolled into a Obi-Wan Kenobi trailer.
Yeah.
But...
like, give us, a full proper trailer at the end to just, like, blow everyone's minds double. But the next episode has got to be, like, double length or something like that. We got no Rancor training in this one. You know, like, there's so much... You know, we know that the Pikes have been sort of recruiting, amassing an army, as referenced in this one, but they've only sort of pulled in a couple of people. in this, we haven't really seen the beginnings of the, we've got the mods, we've got Black Chrysanthemum, Mando, Cobb Vanth is gonna sort of rile up his townspeople, but those are just townspeople. They're not trained assassins. We know that the Pikes have a lot of money at their disposal. They can hire very powerful bounty hunters.
Huge numbers if they're going to take on all of the Tatooine crime organizations.
Yeah.
And obviously they have huge numbers. They had a lot just on that spice train
back
in the earlier episodes.
Yeah.
But I wonder if they'll name the planet the Temple is on or keep it secret.
Yeah. And we were wondering how Mando knew about it. Did he contact Ahsoka? Did he know to go there from Ahsoka? Or did Luke basically say, we'll take him to this planet, when they left? How did he know to go there? Yeah, I'm wondering if they'll give us a little bit more info there to sort of put the pieces together, but honestly, I don't care. I loved that episode. It was just, it was one of those ones that just made you so happy. So much classic Star Wars, and it just felt like we had so much original trilogy stuff. We had Ahsoka to pull in the Clone Wars. We've still got things like the N1. We had the prequel era very solidly with the Order 66 footage, and that's always right in the feels, seeing the Jedi getting slaughtered by clone troopers again. Was not expecting that in my evening. But yeah, I mean, yeah.
We always do this stream and chat at the point where we've only watched it once, so we'll go back and watch it a second time because there's a lot of detail I want to recheck. I want to, I guess, well, I don't know if those, I don't even know if those 501st troopers were CG or if they've gone and slapped people in armor for that.
Yeah, because we know that a lot of the clone troopers in episode 2 and 3 were CG. That I don't know even how much clone armor was ever made in a practical sense. We know that even for the scenes where Tim was doing Cody with his helmet off, we know that a lot of that was just sort of, the blue screen suits, and the armor was CG'd sort of on the top. So it'd be really cool if they have done that.
Yeah, and I'm sure someone,
I don't mind either way, because it was a brief interlude, and I'm not sure they're going to let's make a whole bunch of clone armor for, less than a minute on screen.
There was a brief moment there, and you said the same thing, that we wondered if one of those Jedi who had the unique hairstyle might have been Nick Gillard's character, but when we looked quickly afterwards, it didn't quite match up. But we did see a close-up of a saber dropped on the ground, and I wonder if anybody will recognise that. I wonder if they were significant Jedi.
Yeah, something referenced in a comic or somewhere else. But yeah, it's not as many sort of fine details to screenshot, because a lot of this was on locales we've seen before, but just a lot of dialogue, but good dialogue. There's a lot, and I really, I know it doesn't actually matter at this point if Boba Fett has a second season or not, because at this point they're like, okay, awesome Star Wars, let's just cram in whatever, just going back just a couple of weeks, I never would have thought we would have gotten this much variation in the Book of Boba Fett. It was starting to feel like it was going to be completely on Tatooine, that we weren't going to go anywhere else. It was going to be very, very contained to Tatooine, around Jabba's palace, and Boba Fett and the local denizens, and then boof, we were going all over the place.
So James in chat just talking about the Jedi slaughter. We were talking about the 501st troopers taking out the Jedi in this episode, but the revenge of the Sith, the Order 66 executions in general were pretty.
It's still our daughter is a huge General Grievous fan, but she still gets quite sad at the Order 66 scenes, because it is sad. It's sort of, the Jedi are so central to the whole Star Wars storytelling, and sort of just seeing them all get massacred and betrayed in such a brutal way as well, and especially worse when we go through watching the animated series and seeing just how closely the clone troopers and the Jedi work together. And then imagining, it was awful just seeing them get blasted in episode 3, but knowing just how close and the bonds and friendship that the Jedi made with their clone trooper. It's just awful. So yeah, seeing that, I wonder if they will tell us which Jedi managed to basically either hide Grogu in the temple, so he was not found, and then I guess somebody caught him later because, you know, he was basically captured, kidnapped when Mando rescued him. That the Empire sort of knew of his existence and stuff, so we don't know who basically saved his life there. Certainly referenced that sort of question that a lot of people were like, you know, like, where was Grogu during Order 626? You know, was he in the temple? Was he off on like a field trip? But yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if, like, I'm almost like keen for the point where they start to give Grogu a few words to say. I was like almost wondering if they'd like start to hint on this, or basically that Luke and Grogu are communicating through the Force a little bit, the way that Ahsoka did. That he wasn't talking out loud. She could sort of communicate through the Force to find out his name and sort of more information and stuff like that. So I guess that's what Luke is doing at this point, but it'd be kind of fun. Because we don't know at what sort of maturity age. It would be absolutely crazy to see Grogu wielding a lightsaber at this age. I feel like they might need to sort of up his age or development at least. I don't think he's going to get a whole lot bigger.
So we don't know which path he's going to take.
I don't know which one I want him to take. Like, I kind of
I don't know which one I want
more
either, but
towards the Mando, I think.
I'm hinging my bets, but I think
because that takes him out of the equation when the Knights of Ren come a knocking. If he's with Mando, and that completely just changes the whole trajectory of Mandalorian season 3. I just want that series to hurry up and get here, along with all the others. I mean, if they're blowing us this much with Book of Boba Fett, then I can only imagine what Kenobi's got in store for us. That's going to be crazy.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're getting on a bit, and we want to run through one more viewing. Technically today. So we might call it there for now, but we'll do the same thing next week for what is undoubtedly going to be a crazy finale.
Yeah.
And in between times, we also talk about the episodes in the SWTOR podcast, which comes out weekly, usually on Tuesdays, although we've been sneaking them out on Wednesdays a little bit recently just because of real life. But it'd be great if we can run through this again next week. But we appreciate everyone signing in, joining into the chat, bringing up some really cool observations. So thanks everybody for signing in or listening in.
If they don't give us a trailer or something, even just an announcement, they at least have to give us a date so we know how many weeks of no Star Wars we have to suffer through. Give us like a screen date for Kenobi or something like that. Well, just give us a little bit more information.
They gotta give us something. So we've got a lot to talk about next week.
Yes, it's going to be exciting. In addition
to the episode itself. But I might beam out of here right now.
Yep.
Like I say, thanks everybody for signing in. I really do appreciate being able to chat with people in the audience as well as between ourselves.
Yep.
And we'll see all of you that are interested to join us next week.
Yep. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Take it easy.
May the Force be with you. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a like, check out our other videos, and subscribe for alerts about new uploads. Thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.